What would you do if your husband handed you divorce papers after you told him not to be jealous, just because you shared a bed with my best friend? How could everything fall apart so quickly, just when I finally started living for myself? Let me tell you how I went from feeling untouchable to watching my whole life slip away. All because he wasn't the fool I thought he was. I never thought Malcolm was paying attention. For 12 years of marriage, he seemed content to drift through his routine, grading papers, reading his boring books, tucking our daughter Nora into bed with the same bedtime stories. He was predictable, safe, and honestly, suffocating. That's why when I met Cal at the gym 6 months ago, everything changed. Cal was everything Malcolm wasn't. Spontaneous, exciting, attentive. He made me feel alive again, like the woman I used to be before I became just Malcolm's wife and Nora's mom. "You're glowing lately," my mother Vivian said during one of our weekly coffee dates. "What's your secret?" I smiled, thinking about Cal's hands on my waist during our training sessions. "I've been taking better care of myself, going to the gym more, focusing on my needs for once." "Good for you, honey. Malcolm's had you playing housewife for too long. A woman needs to feel desired." If only she knew how desired I felt when Cal whispered in my ear during our workouts, or when he texted me late at night asking when we could train again. That evening, I was packing my gym bag when Malcolm appeared in the bedroom doorway. His tall frame filled the space, and for a moment, his usually gentle brown eyes looked different, sharper, more observant. "Going to the gym again? It's almost 9 o'clock. "So, the gym's open 24 hours. I like working out when it's less crowded." I stuffed my yoga pants into the bag, avoiding his gaze. "Ithelia, we need to talk about..." "About what? About how I'm finally doing something for myself? About how I'm not sitting around waiting for you to notice me anymore?" The words came out harsher than I intended, but they felt good to say. Malcolm stepped back as if I'd slapped him. "I do notice you. I've always..." "Save it, Malcolm. I'm going to work out. Nora's asleep, so try not to wake her with one of your documentary marathons." I brushed past him, inhaling his familiar scent of coffee and chalk dust from the classroom. For just a second, I felt a pang of something. Guilt, maybe. But Cal's text buzzed on my phone. "Can't wait to see you, beautiful." The feeling vanished. At the gym, Cal was waiting by the free weights, his personal trainer, Physique, on full display in a fitted tank top. Several women were stealing glances at him, but his eyes were only for me. "There's my favorite client," he said, pulling me into a hug that lasted a beat too long. "Ready for some intensive training?" We went through the motions of an actual workout for the first hour: squats, lunges, cardio. But then Cal suggested we grab smoothies at the juice bar, and somehow we ended up in his car, talking and laughing until nearly midnight. "Your husband doesn't appreciate what he has," Cal said, his hand finding mine across the center console. "If you were mine, I'd never let you feel neglected." "Malcolm's a good man," I said automatically, though the words felt hollow. "He's just boring, predictable. Sometimes I feel like I'm disappearing." "You're not disappearing with me, you're coming alive." When I finally got home, Malcolm was still awake, sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of tea and a stack of papers. He looked up when I entered, and I noticed the dark circles under his eyes. "How was your workout?" His voice was carefully neutral. "Good. Productive. I'm really seeing results." I grabbed a water bottle from the fridge, hyper-aware of his eyes following my movements. "Ithelia, I found something today in your gym bag." My blood went cold. "What do you mean, you found something?" He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small piece of paper, a receipt from the bistro, a trendy cafe downtown. The date was from last Tuesday, when I'd told him I was working late on the Henderson insurance claim. "This is from Tuesday afternoon. You said you were at the office until 8. I snatched the receipt from his hand, my mind racing. "I grabbed coffee after work. So what?" "The timestamp says 2:30 p.m. on a Tuesday, when you should have been at work." I had a break. God, Malcolm, are you tracking my every move now? Are you going through my things? I was looking for quarters for laundry. The receipt fell out of your jacket pocket. His voice remained steady, but I could see the hurt in his eyes. I'm not tracking you. I'm trying to understand why my wife is lying to me. I'm not lying. I had a break, I got coffee, I went back to work. Why is that so hard to believe? Because Janet called yesterday looking for you. She said you never came in on Tuesday. The room felt like it was spinning. Janet, my nosy colleague, who couldn't mind her own business. Of course she'd called. Janet doesn't know everything. I was working on client visits. The Henderson claim required field work. Malcolm studied my face for a long moment. There is no Henderson claim, Ithelia. I called your office today. Janet said you haven't had any field work in months. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. I could hear the refrigerator humming, the old house settling, Nora's soft breathing from upstairs. Normal sounds of our normal life that suddenly felt fragile. You called my office? You checked up on me like I'm some kind of criminal? I called because I'm worried about you. About us. You're different, distant. You're gone more nights than you're home. And when you are here, you're somewhere else entirely. Maybe I'm different because I'm finally remembering who I am outside of this house, outside of being your wife and Nora's mother. Maybe I'm different because I'm happy for the first time in years. The words hit Malcolm like physical blows. He stood slowly, gathering his papers with deliberate care. I see. Well, I'm glad you're happy, Ithelia. I truly am. I just wish it didn't require lying to me. He walked toward the stairs, then paused. Your mother called earlier. She's invited us to dinner at Gina's house this Sunday. The whole family. I told her we'd be there. Fine, whatever. But as I watched my husband climb the stairs with his shoulders sagging under some invisible weight, I felt that pang again, stronger this time. I shook it off and texted Cal. Can we meet tomorrow? I need to see you. His response was immediate. Always, beautiful, always. The next morning, Malcolm was already gone when I woke up. He'd left coffee in the pot and Nora's lunch packed on the counter. Small gestures that used to make me feel cared for, but now felt like accusations. Where's Daddy? Nora asked over her cereal. At 9, she was becoming more observant, more sensitive to the tension that seemed to follow me through the house. He left early for work, sweetheart. You know how dedicated he is to his students. The words tasted bitter. Are you and Daddy fighting? I forced a bright smile. Of course not, baby. Sometimes grown-ups just have different opinions about things. It's normal. But Nora's dark eyes, so much like Malcolm's, remained troubled. Emma's parents got divorced last year. She said they fought a lot first. We're not getting divorced, Nora. Don't worry about things like that. Focus on being a kid, okay? After dropping her at school, I drove straight to the gym. Cal was training a client, but he caught my eye and nodded toward the juice bar. 20 minutes later, we were sitting in a corner booth, his hand covering mine across the table. You look stressed, he said, thumb stroking my knuckles. What's going on? Malcolm's getting suspicious. He found a receipt, called my work. I think he knows something's happening. Cal's jaw tightened. What did you tell him? I handled it, but he's not as clueless as I thought. He's actually paying attention now, which is ironic since I spent years begging for his attention. Maybe it's time to make a choice, Ithelia. You can't keep living this double life forever. The weight of his words settled over me. A choice, between my safe, predictable marriage and this intoxicating new life with Cal. Between Malcolm's quiet devotion and Cal's passionate attention. It's not that simple. There's Nora to consider, and the house, and you're scared. Cal's voice was gentle but challenging. You're scared to choose happiness because it means admitting your marriage is over. Was he right? Was I scared or was I being practical? I thought about Malcolm's face last night, the hurt and confusion I'd seen there. Then I thought about how alive I felt with Cal, how he made me feel beautiful and desired and important. I need more time. Cal lifted my hand to his lips, pressing a soft kiss to my palm. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere. That afternoon at work, Janet cornered me by the copy machine. Malcolm called yesterday looking for you. He seemed worried. It was just a misunderstanding about my schedule. Ithelia, I've been your friend for 8 years. I know when you're lying. Janet's voice was concerned, not accusatory. Whatever's going on, be careful. Malcolm's a good man, and Nora needs stability. My personal life is none of your business, Janet. It becomes my business when your husband calls here looking for you, and I have to cover for time you're not actually working. I checked the logs. Ithelia, you've been clocking overtime for weeks, but security shows you leaving early most of those days. My stomach dropped. Are you threatening me? I'm trying to help you before this gets out of hand. If HR audits the timesheets, then don't give them a reason to audit them. My voice came out colder than I intended. I appreciate your concern, Janet, but I can handle my own life. Janet stepped back, hurt flickering across her face. I hope you know what you're doing. That evening, I came home to find Malcolm cooking dinner, pasta with the marinara sauce Nora loved. He looked up when I entered, and for a moment we just stared at each other across the kitchen. How is work? He asked finally. Busy, the usual insurance drama. I set my purse on the counter, noting how he watched my movements. Smells good. Nora requested spaghetti night. She's upstairs doing homework. We moved around each other carefully, like strangers sharing space. I poured wine for both of us, a peace offering of sorts. Malcolm accepted the glass but didn't drink. Ithelia, I want to apologize for yesterday, for going through your things and calling your office. That wasn't right. I nearly choked on my wine. This wasn't what I'd expected. Oh, okay. I've been thinking about what you said, about being happy for the first time in years. If I've made you feel neglected or taken for granted, I'm sorry. I thought we were okay, but clearly I was wrong. The guilt hit me like a physical blow. Here was my husband apologizing for my lies, taking responsibility for my betrayal. I should have felt relieved, but instead I felt trapped. Malcolm, let me finish, please. I want to fix this. Whatever's wrong between us, I want to make it right. For you, for Nora, for us. He moved closer, reaching for my hand. His touch was warm, familiar, safe. Everything Cal wasn't. I love you, Ithelia. I've loved you since we were 22 years old. Maybe I haven't shown it well lately, but that hasn't changed. My phone buzzed with a text. Cal's name flashed on the screen. Missing you already. When can I see you again? Malcolm's eyes flicked to the phone, then back to my face. The moment stretched between us, heavy with unspoken truths. Who's texting you? Work. Probably Janet about tomorrow's schedule. The lie came so easily now. Malcolm nodded slowly, but something in his expression had changed. The openness was gone, replaced by something harder to read. Daddy, Mommy, come see my math homework. Nora's voice called from upstairs, breaking the tension. Coming, sweetheart, Malcolm called back, but his eyes stayed on me for another beat before he turned away. As we helped Nora with fractions and ate spaghetti and went through the motions of being a normal family, I felt like I was watching from outside myself. This was my life, this kitchen, this man, this beautiful daughter, but it felt like wearing clothes that no longer fit. Later, after Nora was in bed, I found Malcolm in his study grading papers. He looked up when I appeared in the doorway. I'm going to bed, I said. Are you coming up soon? In a little while. I want to finish these essays. I hesitated. Malcolm, are we okay? He set down his red pen and really looked at me. I don't know, Ithelia. Are we? The question hung in the air between us. I wanted to say yes, wanted to cross the room and fall into his arms and confess everything and beg forgiveness. But Cal's words echoed in my head. You're scared to choose happiness. I think so, I said finally. I hope so. Malcolm nodded and picked up his pen again. Good night, Ithelia. Good night. But as I lay in our bed, staring at the ceiling and listening to Malcolm moving around downstairs, I knew nothing was okay. And I was beginning to suspect it never would be again. Sunday dinner at Malcolm's mother Gina's house was a family tradition I'd grown to dread. Gina had never quite approved of me, though she was too polite to say so directly. She had a way of asking pointed questions about my job, my cooking, my parenting, that always left me feeling inadequate. Today felt different, though. I felt different. Cal had been texting me all morning, reminding me how beautiful I was, how much he cared about me. His attention was like armor against Gina's subtle criticisms. "Ithelia, you look lovely," Gina said when we arrived, though her smile seemed forced. "That's a new dress, isn't it?" "Yes, I bought it last week." I smoothed the fitted red dress I'd chosen specifically because Cal said red was my color. I decided it was time to update my wardrobe. Malcolm's brother Tristan was already there with his wife and 2 young sons. The house buzzed with conversation and the sound of children playing. It should have felt warm and welcoming, but I felt like an outsider looking in. "Uncle Malcolm!" Nora ran to hug Malcolm's legs. She adored her uncle, and the feeling was mutual. Watching them together, I felt a familiar pang of something I couldn't quite name. "How's work treating you, Ithelia?" Tristan asked as we gathered in the living room. "Malcolm says you've been putting in a lot of overtime lately." I shot Malcolm a sharp look. "It's busy season. Insurance claims always spike this time of year." "That's dedication," Gina said, but something in her tone suggested she wasn't entirely convinced. "It must be hard being away from home so much." "Sometimes sacrifice is necessary for success," I replied, thinking of my afternoon plans with Cal. We were supposed to meet at the bistro after dinner for what he'd called our time. The conversation moved on, but I caught Malcolm watching me with that new intensity I'd noticed lately. When dinner was served, I barely tasted Gina's pot roast, too focused on the clock and my phone. "Mommy, you're not eating," Nora observed. "Are you sick?" "I'm fine, sweetheart, just not very hungry." "Maybe you're working too hard," Gina suggested. "Family time is important too." "I'm here, aren't I?" The words came out sharper than I intended. The table fell silent. Malcolm reached for my hand under the table. "Ithelia's been under a lot of stress lately. We're working through it." His touch felt like a shackle. I pulled my hand away and reached for my wine glass instead. The rest of dinner passed in uncomfortable politeness. When it was time to leave, I claimed a headache and said I needed to run some errands alone. Malcolm offered to come with me, but I insisted I needed space to clear my head. "I'll take Nora home and get her ready for school tomorrow," he said. "Take all the time you need." If only he knew what I needed that time for. An hour later, I was sitting across from Cal at the bistro, feeling alive again. He'd chosen a corner table where we could talk privately, and his attention was completely focused on me. "You're tense," he observed, reaching across to massage my shoulders. "Family dinner that bad?" "They don't understand me. Malcolm's family has always made me feel like an outsider, like I'm not good enough for their precious son. Their loss. You're incredible, Ithelia. Smart, beautiful, passionate. Any man would be lucky to have you." His words were exactly what I needed to hear. This was what had been missing from my marriage, this feeling of being truly seen and appreciated. "Sometimes I wonder what my life would be like if I'd never gotten married so young," I admitted. "If I'd waited, explored my options." Cal's hand found mine across the table. "It's not too late to explore those options." We were so absorbed in our conversation that I didn't notice the familiar figure approaching our table until it was too late. "Hello, Ithelia." I looked up to find Malcolm standing beside our table, his face carefully neutral. My heart stopped. "Malcolm, what are you doing here?" "I could ask you the same question." His eyes moved from me to Cal, taking in our joined hands, the intimate way we were sitting. "I thought you needed space to clear your head." Cal straightened in his chair but didn't let go of my hand. "You must be the husband." I'm Cal, Ithelia's personal trainer. Personal trainer. Malcolm's voice was flat. I see. Malcolm, this isn't what it looks like. What does it look like, Ithelia? He pulled out a chair and sat down without being invited. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like my wife is on a date with another man, while our daughter is at home asking why Mommy had to leave. We're just talking. Cal's been helping me work through some things. I bet he has. Malcolm's voice remained calm, but I could see the anger building behind his eyes. Tell me, Cal, what kind of training do you specialize in? Because my wife's been doing a lot of training lately. Cal shifted uncomfortably. Look, man, I don't want any trouble. Then maybe you should stop sleeping with married women. The words hung in the air like a bomb. I felt the blood drain from my face. We're not sleeping together, I hissed, aware that other diners were starting to stare. How dare you accuse me? Aren't you? Malcolm's voice was deadly quiet. Because I found the hotel receipt, Ithelia. The Marriott downtown, last Thursday. The same day you told me you were working late on the Henderson claim. My world tilted. You went through my purse? I was looking for Nora's permission slip for her field trip. You said it was in your purse. He reached into his jacket and placed a crumpled receipt on the table. Room 412, checked in at 2 p.m., checked out at 6 p.m., 4 hours. Cal's hand finally dropped mine. The betrayal on Malcolm's face was devastating, but it was the disappointment that cut deepest. Malcolm, I can explain. Can you explain why you're charging hotel rooms to our joint credit card? Can you explain why you've been lying about overtime when you're actually here with him? He gestured toward Cal. Can you explain why our 9-year-old daughter asked me tonight if you don't love us anymore? The last question hit me like a physical blow. Nora said that? She's not stupid, Ithelia. Children sense these things. She knows something's wrong and she's blaming herself. Tears stung my eyes, but I fought them back. You don't understand. You don't know what it's like to feel invisible in your own marriage. Invisible? Malcolm's composure finally cracked. I've spent 12 years trying to make you happy. I've supported your career, taken care of our home, raised our daughter. What more did you want from me? I wanted you to see me, to want me, to make me feel like I mattered. You've always mattered. You matter more than anything. His voice broke slightly. But apparently, that wasn't enough. The restaurant had gone quiet around us. I was dimly aware of servers whispering, of other diners pretending not to stare. This was supposed to be my moment of happiness, my escape from the mundane reality of my marriage. Instead, it felt like a public execution. Cal cleared his throat. Maybe I should go. Yes, Malcolm said without looking at him. You should. Ithelia. Cal looked at me expectantly, waiting for me to choose him, to leave with him, to pick my new life over my old one. But looking at Malcolm's devastated face, thinking about Nora at home, wondering why Mommy had to leave, I felt paralyzed. I need to think. Cal's expression hardened. Right, well, you know where to find me when you figure out what you want. He stood and walked away without looking back, leaving me alone with my husband and the wreckage of our marriage. Malcolm sat quietly for a long moment, staring at the hotel receipt. When he finally looked up, his eyes were different, harder, more resolved. I'm filing for divorce, Ithelia. Malcolm, please. I'm also requesting primary custody of Nora. I won't have her living with someone who thinks lying and cheating are acceptable ways to handle marital problems. You can't take my daughter away from me. I'm not taking her away. You're giving her up. Every lie you've told, every night you've spent with him instead of with her, every time you've chosen your happiness over her stability, you've been giving her up. He stood and placed a $20 bill on the table. I'll be staying at Tristan's tonight. I think you need time to decide what kind of person you want to be. As I watched my husband walk away, I realized that for the first time in months, I was truly alone. And it didn't feel liberating at all. The next few weeks passed in a blur of lawyers, accusations, and the slow dismantling of everything I'd built over 12 years of marriage. Malcolm moved out completely, taking only his clothes and books, leaving behind a house that felt like a museum of our former life together. Nora was staying with me during the week and with Malcolm on weekends, but the arrangement felt temporary, fragile. She'd grown quiet and withdrawn, spending most of her time in her room when she wasn't at school. "Mommy, are you and Daddy getting divorced like Emma's parents?" she asked one morning over breakfast. I set down my coffee cup with shaking hands. "We're having some problems, sweetheart. But no matter what happens, we both love you very much." "Is it because of the man from the restaurant?" My blood went cold. "What man?" "The one Daddy was angry about. I heard him talking to Uncle Tristan on the phone. He said you chose someone else." I knelt down beside her chair, taking her small hands in mine. "Nora, sometimes grown-ups make mistakes. Big mistakes. But that doesn't mean we stop loving our children." "Did you make a mistake?" The question hung between us like a bridge I couldn't cross. How do you explain to a 9-year-old that her mother had blown up their family for a man who disappeared the moment things got complicated? Because that's exactly what Cal had done. After the confrontation at the bistro, he'd become increasingly distant. Our text conversations grew shorter, our meetings less frequent. When I'd finally called him crying after Malcolm served me with divorce papers, Cal had been sympathetic but evasive. "This is heavy stuff, Ithelia. Maybe we should take a break while you sort things out with your husband." "I thought you wanted to be with me. I thought you said it wasn't too late to explore my options." "I do want to be with you, but not like this. Not with all this legal drama and custody battles. I'm not ready for that kind of responsibility." The line had gone quiet, except for the sound of my heart breaking. "So you're abandoning me, just like that?" "I'm not abandoning you. I'm being realistic. You need to figure out your life, and I need to protect mine." That had been a week ago. Since then, Cal had stopped returning my calls altogether. Now, sitting across from my lawyer in her sterile downtown office, I was beginning to understand the full scope of what I'd lost. "Mrs. Harker, I have to be honest with you," Jennifer Walsh said, sliding a thick folder across the desk. "Your husband's legal team has built a very strong case. The evidence of adultery is overwhelming, and when combined with the financial irregularities at your workplace—" "What financial irregularities?" "The overtime fraud investigation. Your employer provided records showing a pattern of falsified timesheets over the past 6 months. You've been terminated, and they're considering pressing charges." The room spun around me. "They can't prove I did anything wrong. They have security footage of you leaving the building at times when you claimed to be working late. They have testimony from colleagues who covered for your absences, and they have hotel receipts charged to your company credit card for personal use." I'd used the company card for my meetings with Cal, thinking I could reimburse the account before anyone noticed. Another mistake in a growing pile of them. "What does this mean for the custody case?" Jennifer's expression was grim. "It means your husband's request for primary custody is likely to be granted. A judge isn't going to award custody to a parent who's demonstrated a pattern of dishonesty and financial misconduct." "But she's my daughter. I'm her mother." "And you'll still be her mother, but you'll likely be limited to supervised visitation until you can demonstrate stability and trustworthiness." The words hit me like physical blows. Supervised visitation, like I was a danger to my own child. That evening, I called my mother in desperation. Vivian had been supportive of my journey of self-discovery at first, but even she seemed to be wavering now. "Honey, maybe it's time to consider reconciliation," she said carefully. "Malcolm's a good man, and Nora needs stability." "I thought you said I deserved to be happy. I thought you said Malcolm was holding me back." "I said you deserved to feel desired and appreciated. I didn't say you should blow up your family for a man who won't even return your phone calls." The truth of her words stung. "So now you're taking his side too?" I'm taking Nora's side. That little girl is caught in the middle of this mess, and she's the only one who's completely innocent. After hanging up, I found myself standing in Nora's doorway, watching her sleep. Her dark hair was spread across her pillow, and she looked so young, so vulnerable. What had I done to her? What had I done to us? The next morning brought another devastating blow. Malcolm's lawyer called to inform me that they'd be deposing several witnesses, including my former colleagues and members of both our families. What kind of witnesses? I asked. People who can speak to your character and parenting abilities. Your mother-in-law has agreed to testify about your behavior at family gatherings. Your former colleague Janet will be discussing the workplace misconduct, and your daughter's school counselor will be providing a report on how the marital discord has affected Nora's emotional well-being. Each name was like another nail in the coffin of my former life. These were people who'd known me for years, who'd watched me become someone I no longer recognized. That afternoon, I drove to the gym one last time, hoping to find Cal, hoping to salvage something from the wreckage, but the receptionist informed me that he no longer worked there. He gave his notice last week, she said with barely concealed disdain, didn't say where he was going. Standing in the parking lot where I'd spent so many hours dreaming of a different life, I finally understood what I'd traded away. My marriage hadn't been perfect, but it had been real. Malcolm's love hadn't been passionate or exciting, but it had been steady and true. Our family hadn't been a fairy tale, but it had been ours. And I'd thrown it all away for a fantasy that had evaporated the moment it was tested by reality. My phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. Malcolm's name appeared on the screen. Hello? Ithelia, we need to talk. Can you meet me at the house tonight after Nora goes to bed? His voice was formal, businesslike. The warmth I'd taken for granted for 12 years was gone. Of course. Is everything okay? We'll discuss it tonight. The line went dead, leaving me alone with the growing certainty that my reckoning was far from over. Malcolm arrived at 8 o'clock sharp, carrying a manila folder and wearing the same serious expression he'd had the night everything fell apart. He looked older somehow, more tired, but also more resolved. Thank you for agreeing to meet, he said formally, as if I were a stranger instead of the woman who'd shared his bed for 12 years. This is still my house too, Malcolm, at least for now. He nodded and sat down at the kitchen table, the same table where we'd shared thousands of meals, helped Nora with homework, planned our future together. Now it felt like a conference room. I wanted to discuss the custody arrangement before we go to court next week. My stomach clenched. What about it? I'm prepared to offer you alternating weekends and one evening per week, unsupervised, if you agree to certain conditions. What conditions? Malcolm opened the folder and pulled out a typed document. First, you complete a parenting class and undergo counseling to address the issues that led to this situation. Second, you maintain stable employment and housing. Third, you have no overnight guests when Nora is with you. The last condition felt like a slap. You're treating me like I'm unfit. Aren't you? His voice was quiet but devastating. Ithelia, you lied to our daughter for months. You used company funds to pay for hotel rooms with your lover. You put your own desires ahead of her emotional well-being. How is that fit parenting? I wanted to argue, to defend myself, but the words wouldn't come. Everything he'd said was true. I made mistakes, but I love Nora. She's my daughter. Then prove it. Take the deal. Show her that you're willing to do the work to be the mother she deserves. I stared at the document, seeing my future laid out in legal terms. 2 weekends a month. 1 evening per week. Supervised by court-appointed monitors until I could prove my stability. What about the house? I'm buying out your share. The equity will give you enough for a down payment on a small place. Somewhere you can rebuild. Rebuild. The word felt foreign, impossible. How do you rebuild from nothing? I never meant for it to go this far, I whispered. I just wanted to feel alive again. Malcolm's expression softened slightly. I know, but feeling alive isn't worth destroying the people who love you. Did you ever love me? Really love me? The question hung between us, and for a moment, I saw a glimpse of the man I'd married, the one who'd held me during thunderstorms and brought me coffee in bed on Sunday mornings. I loved you more than my own life, he said quietly. I still love the woman you used to be, but I can't live with the woman you've become. Tears finally came, hot and bitter. I'm sorry, Malcolm. I'm so sorry. I know you are. But sorry doesn't fix what's broken. He stood to leave, then paused at the door. For what it's worth, I hope you find what you're looking for. I hope you find peace, but I won't sacrifice our daughter's stability while you figure it out. After he left, I sat alone in the kitchen, staring at the custody agreement. In the distance, I could hear Nora moving around upstairs, getting ready for bed. Soon, even those sounds would be gone. Soon, this house would echo with emptiness. The court hearing the following week was a formality. Malcolm's lawyer presented their evidence methodically. The hotel receipts, the falsified timesheets, the testimony from colleagues and family members. My own lawyer did her best, but we had little to work with. Gina's testimony was particularly damaging. She spoke about my behavior at family dinners, my obvious disinterest in family activities, the way I'd spoken dismissively about Malcolm in front of Nora. She seemed to view her family as an obligation rather than a blessing, Gina said from the witness stand. Her priority was clearly elsewhere. Janet's testimony about the workplace misconduct was clinical but devastating. She'd tried to warn me, tried to help me course correct, but I'd pushed her away too. Even my mother's testimony was lukewarm at best. Ithelia is a good person who made some poor choices, she said carefully. I believe she can learn from this experience. But it was Nora's school counselor who delivered the final blow. Nora has exhibited signs of anxiety and depression over the past several months, she testified. She's expressed feelings of guilt about her parents' problems and fear about the stability of her home environment. She's asked me repeatedly if there's something she could do to make her mother happy. The words shattered something inside me. My beautiful daughter, blaming herself for my failures, trying to fix what I had broken. When the judge delivered his verdict, I felt strangely numb. Primary custody to Malcolm. Supervised visitation for me until I completed counseling and demonstrated stability. Division of assets heavily favoring Malcolm due to my financial misconduct. I was allowed to hug Nora goodbye before she left with Malcolm. She clung to me tightly, and I could feel her small body shaking. I love you, Mommy. I'm sorry I couldn't make you happy. Oh, sweetheart, I whispered into her hair. This isn't your fault. None of this is your fault. Mommy made some bad choices, but that doesn't mean I don't love you more than anything in the world. Will you get better? Will you come home? I looked over her head at Malcolm, who was watching us with a mixture of sadness and resolve. I'm going to try, baby. I'm going to try to be the mommy you deserve. As they walked away, Nora's hand in Malcolm's, I realized that this wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of a much harder one, the story of learning to live with the consequences of my choices, of trying to rebuild trust I'd shattered, of becoming someone worthy of the love I'd thrown away. 6 months later, I'm living in a small apartment across town, working as a receptionist at a medical office, and attending court-mandated counseling twice a week. I see Nora every other weekend and on Wednesday evenings. Our visits are still supervised, but the monitor has recommended that restriction be lifted soon. Malcolm has started dating someone, a fellow teacher named Sarah, who makes Nora laugh and doesn't seem to mind that she comes with complicated baggage. It hurts to see them together, but I'm trying to focus on what's best for my daughter rather than my own pain. Cal never called. I heard through mutual acquaintances that he moved to another state, found another gym, probably another married woman looking for excitement. I don't think about him much anymore. What we had wasn't love. It was just two people using each other to avoid dealing with their real problems. I think about Malcolm sometimes, about the life we had, and the life we might have had if I'd chosen differently. But mostly, I think about Nora and the long road ahead of us. I think about earning back her trust, about becoming the mother she deserves, about learning to find happiness without destroying the people who love me. It's harder than I thought it would be, this rebuilding. But for the first time in a long time, I'm doing it honestly. And maybe, eventually, that will be enough.